Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in this video. Just barely a week after the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israeli government visited Nigeria, just connecting the dots, a Palestinian leader in Abuja has been arrested. That is quite interesting by the Anti-Terrorism Squad. The leader of the Palestinian community in Nigeria has been linked to the act of terrorism just barely 1 week after the deputy foreign minister of Israel was in Abuja to pay a visit. Of course, that have unveiled certain secrets going on within Nigeria. And this has caused the likes of Sheik Gumi to raise early alarm over the possibility of arrest of certain Islamic leaders linked to the act of terrorism. So why is Gumi in early panic? And eventually, this is happening just barely a week. He is in Abuja, of course, to foster and strengthen the bilateral relationship and cooperation with the Nigerian government, which the Nigerian government under Ahmed Bola Tinubu embraced as a welcome development because the security and military cooperation must be strengthened. The technical know-how and innovation, military innovations and technicalities by the Israeli is needed to surmount this very deadly trend or monster called insecurity prevalent in the northern part of the country. So it is now very clear. We now understand better why the like of Sheikh Gumi, who is at large now, of course, because we don't know his whereabouts, he has gone to silence with this current developments. You understand what Palestine implies. The Palestinian leader, if the anti-terrorism squad, of course, could arrest such personality. The Nigerian government is now trying to live up to this expectation so that they could possibly delete their name from the most terrorized countries of the world. You know, it's been considered that Nigeria is part of the worst place to live in the world. This is, of course, linked to the incessant attack, terrorism, and unrelated crime. That Nigeria is now about third of the most terrorized nations of the world after Afghanistan and Yemen, and about the 10th worst country to live on. Because of these escalations and even the Canadian government considered APC and PDP as the terrorist organizations for aiding such and abetting such atrocious, of course, developments bordering on gross violations of fundamental human rights and dignity. Definitely, the government of Ahmed Bola Tinubu is sitting up saying we are not going to accept this continue. And hence, they are making very calculative, proactive move to need those responsible for the continued escalation of this, the act of terrorism. When you talk about Palestinian uh, communities, you eventually be reminded of the Hamas. The how robust the operations of Hamas is in Gaza, and despite Israelis' intelligence and sophistication, how they have been finding it very difficult to contend the oppressions and existence of Hamas to the point that they even invaded Israeli states. You see, they dug their trenches into Israeli, of course, territory just to unleash mayhem on the Israeli population. So, if they could definitely have such infantry and courage to dare Israeli, knowing fully well that they are not matched to Israel, but such courage, determinations, and hatred for Israel prompted them to do that. It is quite very unfortunate. Now, people who don't want the truth to be expressed will now say that the sponsors, you understand? Now, some persons or the sponsors of terrorism will term it a hunt to Islamic leaders. Criminals in Abuja has destroyed this country using the poor as a tool. Now, some vested interests will now describe it as the hunt against the Islamic leaders. But that is not the truth. As it's been reported, some Alewa youths are staging a protest, possibly against Tinubu, that enough is enough. Ever since Tinubu comes into office, of course, things has not remained the same. What exactly do they mean at this particular time? You cannot say that in terms of security, that Buhari's administration is better either. And none of them raised a voice, raised the dust throughout the 8 years dispensation of Buhari, who happens to be their brother. In fact, Boko Haram was emboldened, insurgency, terrorism was emboldened under the watch of Buhari. Now, Tinubu have come to say, no, we have to take a different dimension and approach to this issue because it is no longer, of course, projecting the image of Nigeria as a country that has regard for the rule of law and uphold the sacredness of human life. Just as we have seen that even the terrorists gave the baby of their victims to their dogs to eat. That is how horrible that has, humanity has been brought so low. Humanity is dead in Nigeria by that singular act of terrorism, and that would have spurred the government to throw its weight against this assailants who has no regard for human dignity nor have respect for God Almighty. So anybody who might misunderstand these steps are taken by Ahmed Bola Tinubu should be a suspect. That is nothing but the truth. As Tinubu have expressed strong determination to end this act of terrorism by every means possible. If that means increasing the presence of the Israeli intelligence agency, which I strongly believe with this recent military collaboration strengthened, definitely more revelations regarding these uh, actions and activities of these terrorists will be unveiled. And those sponsoring it or behind this act of terrorism must be brought to justice. It is quite a very interesting development, honestly. And everyone must understand the implication and the consequences of not fighting these monsters because it has disrupted the economic, societal activities. People have been displaced in their homes. Are the Arewas happy about that? Is Tinubu their major problem? No, is Tinubu the major problem of the Arewas? If they are to stage a protest or whatever, enough is enough. What exactly is they trying to pass across? Is Tinubu responsible for the escalation of criminality, insecurity, terrorism in their own region? Why are the Arewa youths not standing up to the occasion to hold the governors, the political and religious leaders, traditional leaders in their own region accountable for the escalation of insecurity in their region? Why are they after Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who said we must end this insurgency? You can imagine that even Muslims are being attacked in their worship centers. I thought the Arawas youth would have raised concern or alarm over the escalation of this act of terror. It has now moved from the marketplace, the farmlands, now to the cathedral, to the place of worship or procession, religious procession, laying ambush against those, of course, coming from religious procession and the rest of them, killing them, knowing fully well that this is where they are coming from. And the lives of Arewa youth, possibly are not perturbed about the number of people that are being killed, but their target is against Tinubu because they felt that Tinubu need to get out of the way, possibly that could be considered an accomplice to the act of terrorism or whatever is going on. So the arrest of this Palestinian leader community in Nigeria speaks volume by the Anti-Terrorism Squad. Of course, we have so many dots to connect as Israeli government is involved. Definitely, you get to hear more. And those terrorism sympathizers and sponsors might consider Nigeria no longer a safe haven for them, as we have seen cases of it's been reported that over 8 terrorist groups have invaded Nigeria, have consolidated their base and expanding, of course, their tentacles and their cells across the different regions of the country, consolidating and building up their base to unleash mayhem on the indigenous communities. In the recent past, we saw how majority of them, about 100 or 1,000, was now around the axis of Oshobo, Osun State, and in several parts of the country, or your and different parts of the country. So these are issues of national concern. If the Arewa youths are not bothered that their own territory, their own region is no longer safe, secured for the population of the youths and of course, of the people of the North. So what is their interest in that? If they are not standing up to condemn that, what I expected them to do is maybe to raise concerns that Tinubu should facilitate and, I mean, be more committed to the fight against insurgency and not the other way around. They should have encouraged and supported Tinubu in his fight against terrorism in the north, which the likes of Gumi said even the next 10, 20 years, it is not impossible. It is barely impossible to take Boko Haram out of the way. On several occasions have justified the actions of this is Boko Haram. You begin to wonder what exactly, where is the place of humanity? So for you to eat, you need to go and kidnap children, school children, so that you can raise money through act of terrorism to eat. How justifiable is such? And sadly, as such person is not even being arrested or questioned by the appropriate bodies. How could you, because you want to eat, you carry gun and enter streets to go and rob people? And when you are eventually caught, or somebody, of course, uh, plan to arrest such people or such conditions, you say that the person shouldn't do that because these people are justified. They are fighting for survival. Wow, that could only be possible in Nigeria. Well, Tinubu has expressed his readiness and commitment to address that. But one thing is important, how far could he drive that? That is what we are more interested, honestly. With this development as move, of course, we hope that so many anomalies must be addressed. As I've at least pointed out in the previous edition, that not until the financiers of this terrorism are brought to justice, of course, terrorism and the act of terrorism will continue to strive. Excuse me, that is just the case. Not until the government show readiness and preparedness, political will and sincerity to address and arrest and bring to justice the financiers of this act of terrorism. Because according to the ex-military GOC or Army GOC, he said the terrorism financiers are known but protected by who? Who is shielding them? Who is giving them that protection? Is it the government? Or are they more powerful than the instrument of the states? Or the government, as a matter of fact? Then let them tell Nigerians who are the accomplice, who are the ones shielding them or giving them protection. It is a very disturbing development. Let them tell Nigerians who are the ones. If a high profile personality, military or security officer of such caliber will make such assertions, then there is something very fundamentally wrong, which needed to be fixed. Head of the Palestinian community in Nigeria, Ramzi Abdul Ibrahim, has been arrested by the Anti-Terrorism Squad in Abuja. This is a kind of action we want to see. This is not Buhari's government where terrorists were treated like kings and queens. This is a bold step in the right direction. Nice job. Well, that is quite interesting. One of the viewers reacting saying that this is a nice job. This is not Buhari's dispensation where terrorism campaigns are being celebrated as kings and queens, that the act of terror must be considered under any disguise as criminality against humanity and could not by any means be justified. How could you say that the people kidnapping children, school children, torturing them, subjecting them to exploitation, sexual exploitation, and psychological and emotional trauma, that they are justified? In fact, any person that makes that statement is a terrorist personified. You don't imagine the level of subjugation, emotional, psychological, and physiological trauma these people might be going through. I mean, children, innocent children, for not committing any crime because they found themselves in a society that is so cruel and has no regard for human dignity and the sanctity of human life. And someone somewhere has to justify their actions, and yet it's not been nabbed by the state. That they are doing that to raise money to eat. So even Nigeria now that is hungry, just as there is economic some assaults or inflation is at increase. So everybody is not justified because of the state of economy to go and steal or to go and kidnap somebody and eat. When he or she is being caught, they say it's justified because even Gumi justified the terrorists, the Boko Haram kidnapping children, school children, that they are fighting for their right. What exactly do they mean? Definitely, well, only time will reveal more shocking revelations, honestly, because I strongly believe that Tinubu meant business of defending and fighting against this insurgency. Hopefully, well, that will be done, and more people, more heads possibly will roll. But my concern is could it be a mere political jamboree just for the election, or could it be born out of the sea? I haven't seen the extent of horror people have been subjugated to. Tinubu want to put to an end all these evil merchants and the satanic incarnates operating in human form. Well, it's quite unfortunate. Wow. So Hamas did this Nigeria. I think say na joke. Somebody is expressing so Hamas did this Nigeria. I think say na joke. Criminal is criminal. Detain him until, of course, I finish with what I'm doing. Well, could the alarm raised by Sheik Gumi be true? Mossad operatives in Nigeria, if it is true, well, this is yielding a positive result. But some people are still skeptic about these developments. Somebody said 2027 trying to be in the good books of Donald Trump. That Tinubu is acting just for his political interests and not just because he has the interest of eradicating the act of terrorism.